So now that we've established the origins of protocells and what they come from, we can now finally look at this material that I mentioned at the end of our last video about heredity. Specifically, we can look at the protocell formation and its relationship to genetic material. Because what good is life unless you can transfer this genetic material? What good is life? Life is not possible unless we see genetic material being transferred on to the next generation. So what is genetic material? Let's look at the normal thing that we usually expect to encounter in life and in living cells. So normally in living cells, so that's what our focus is on right now, not protocells. In living cells, we have genetic info, but it's stored in a specific way. Genetic info, and it's usually stored very nicely, stored as, and you guys all know what this is, it's stored as DNA, our blueprint for life. And a basic thing that occurs in life and sort of a hallmark of life is this idea of DNA turning into RNA and then turning into a functional protein. This is known as the central dogma of biology. But what I want to focus on is this idea of our DNA turning into this, RNA. This seems like a weird middle step. And it's actually sort of counterintuitive because we understand now that it's actually going back to RNA. It goes back to RNA, and it seems kind of backwards because RNA is a less stable form of DNA. And now we wonder to ourselves, why does this step occur? This is an interesting step, going back to RNA and then to protein. What's the purpose of this? What does this tell us? What this tells us, and what is confirmed by many different experiments, is this idea of the Rna World Hypothesis. The Rna World Hypothesis is something that focuses on a prebiotic Earth. Pre meaning before, and biotic, if we should know this by now, meaning life. So a prebiotic Earth, if we focus our attention to a prebiotic Earth, we actually notice that RNA molecules are present. They are here. This is based off a fossil record, and different research shows that RNA molecules were present even before life itself. And we notice that RNA molecules, they are able to act very independently. Very, very independently. What are some hallmarks of that? They actually were able to replicate themselves, so they replicated themselves. RNA molecules replicated themselves. And in addition, they actually made proteins. They formed protein. There was protein synthesis seen at the prebiotic Earth level. And there was also this idea of ribozymes. We saw ribozymes in this RNA World Hypothesis. Ribozymes are just basically catalytic RNA. Catalytic RNA is a fancy way of saying RNA that does stuff, that tells other things to act. And ribozymes were seen in this RNA World Hypothesis. This is another proof that RNA was very important early on. So now, based off of these two facts of ribozymes and the prebiotic Earth seeing RNA, we can finally state that, and especially because of this idea of DNA going back to RNA, a less stable, less advanced form of itself, and then to protein, that we can confidently say, and most scientists will agree, that RNA is equal to the first genetic material. This was the first genetic material present on Earth because of these facts that we saw. This first genetic material was seen, and then later on we can say that DNA evolved later. DNA evolved, and evolution, even though we haven't talked about it much yet, is the constant evolution. Basically, evolution is stating that things are getting better, and DNA is a better version of RNA. We can ask ourselves why. Why did it evolve later? Because DNA is actually double-stranded, and because it's double-stranded, RNA is actually only single-stranded. Double-stranded DNA means that we have something that's actually more stable. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. This is a more stable form, and it's a better way to store info. So we can write better info storage. So what's the overall theme here? What's the overall idea? The overall idea is that protocells, early on, these first cells, eventually had to have some sort of genetic information. But the true question is, was it DNA or RNA? If we look at our own cells, our living cells, we notice that genetic information is stored as DNA, and we think, oh, it must be DNA. We're the most advanced organisms on Earth. We must have started off just the same way as our DNA is, as our genetic blueprint is. But if we look more closely at our DNA and the way that it turns into a functional protein, we notice this middleman. This middleman right here is RNA. Why does it go back to a form that's less advanced than itself? And if we go to the RNA World Hypothesis, we realize why. Because RNA was the first genetic material. We as humans just were able to evolve it into DNA, into deoxyribonucleic acid. That thus allowed us to get double-stranded information storage, which became more stable and a better way to store information. So overall, this is our path that we're continuing on. We started at the chemical evolution level, then we went to the small organic molecule, then we went to the large organic polymers. Now we're finally near our point of life, actual living cells, because we've covered what genetic material is, and now we can finally get into the actual start of life.